The big thing right now, and the reason why I felt I needed to jump on the mic, even though like my time is precious, is that we have a fucking crisis over Kashmir, right? Between India and Pakistan. We're one step away from limited war and a nuclear crisis. So on April 22nd, a terrorist group killed 25 Hindu tourists and a local Kashmiri near a town called Pahalgam, which is a gorgeous resort town, like beautiful naturescapes and stuff. India claims that Pakistan was sponsoring the group that conducted the attack. India retaliated yesterday, yes, 2 days ago, by attacking Pakistani territory, which it did also in 2019. But this attack was bigger, right? It's an escalation. And India says that it's only targeted 9 sites in Pakistan, very tailored or whatever, very precision strike, and that these sites were quote unquote terrorist infrastructure. That's India's words, right? But one of those sites was a mosque, which is obviously pretty egregious. India is not sharing any proof of Pakistani involvement, right? It's not sharing any proof that the sites that it attacked were terrorist camps or whatever. And Pakistan denies that it had anything to do with this, right? So, and on top of all of this, India is not allowing any kind of international investigation so far. So, like, all of that is very problematic. Like, the kids would say it's sus, right? Pakistan said that at least so far, 31 of its civilians have been killed, 46 have been wounded. Pakistan has promised to retaliate in like pretty, blood-soaked strong language. And they've already said that they've shot down 5 Indian aircrafts and several drones. And there's disputes about whether that's true. But nobody knows if that's the totality of the Pakistani response. Is that what they meant by retaliation? Is that the first salvo? We don't fucking know yet, right? Hopefully it is. The question is, why is this happening? And it depends how deep you want to go with establishing causality, because the initial terrorist attack was a response to India's extraterritorial aggression, its unilateral control of Kashmir, right? This is not Indian territory. India claims it as territory. That's revanchism, right? And in the root cause progressive foreign policy sense, India caused this attack on itself. This is the tragedy of thinking like a military bro. You cause attacks on yourself and you don't even realize it. You don't acknowledge it. That's you like experience the world as tragic and full of black swans without any sense that like you have brought this on yourself, right? That's where we're at. Narendra Modi, Hindu fascist, right? He caused this because in 2019, he unilaterally revoked Kashmir's autonomous status. India moved in, seized military occupied larger portions of Kashmir. And as part of that, it has denied local Kashmiris not just self-determination, which is an ongoing denial, but also just basic civil liberties. And this is why there is Kashmiri separatist terrorist groups in existence, right? So this was an aggressive move. India has shown more aggression toward Kashmir the last 6 years than China has shown toward Hong Kong, to put this in perspective, right? And so if you know the situation, you know Indian ethnonationalism led to Modi basically turning India into a revisionist power here. Hindu fascism in India. The problem is like, it's not that Pakistan's a good guy here. They do state sponsor terrorism. Pakistan right now, it's not a military junta, but the military has more influence over Pakistani government decision making than almost at any point in my lifetime. So this is kind of like super problematic. And both sides are taking this tone rhetorically of like they seek to reestablish deterrence. And that's why they do what they do. They launch attacks and counterattacks in the name of reestablishing deterrence. I was a deterrence scholar before I was a critic. Reestablishing deterrence is not a thing. That doesn't have conceptual mooring. It's a logic that is illogical. And so both countries right now, so far, they're issuing statements that they don't want to go further. They both have everything to lose from a war. Like they both have pretty precarious economies right now. Pakistan is like in a pretty desperate situation. India, in a strategic sense, it cannot afford to have a two-front conflict with like Pakistan and China at the same time. And anything you do toward Pakistan is a diversion away from their fetish, the strategic community's fetish with like China. India doesn't need to be in a conflict with China either, but it is what it is, right? Like in the strategy brain, you can't have a two-front conflict, right? So that's a problem. But the larger problem here is that they're both trapped in a conflict spiral, right? But the Pakistan and India, like the logic that leads India and Pakistan to retaliate against each other is a logic that does not allow for either to basically back down. Now, they could embrace a different logic. They could come to their senses. It was stupid of India to launch this attack on Pakistani soil in the first place. You know, Pakistan's immediate retaliation is proof that India's attack did not reestablish deterrence. Why? Because violence is the surest way to destabilize deterrence, right? When you attack someone, you're inviting an attack on yourself. And so the risk of nuclear escalation here is not trivial. It's useful to sort of bring in the historic, not just the historical context, but the last big nuclear crisis they had, right? The Kargil War in 1999. Thousands died, nuclear alerts, nuclear threats being bandied about. It was real shit. And like, I know people who were involved in the Kargil War, like former US officials and stuff. Shit got way closer to a nuclear war than the public realizes, you know? And at that time, we had some things on our side that favored stability, right? America was the global hegemon. It intervened in a kind of productive, stabilizing way, had personal relationships that it could use. That's just not where things are now, right? The US doesn't have the clout. We don't have the competence. We don't have the good offices. And it's going to be basically up to like, Pakistan and India either resolve this shit themselves or it's going to be other third parties that aren't the US, like France or China or something. Like, otherwise, this shit just doesn't get managed at all. And like, there is no stability to be had in situations that are defined in terms of mutual fear. Deterrence is not the foundation for stability. It's the opposite. And strategic studies scholars have really fucked up in making us think otherwise, right? So I guess the other thing to add, post unipolarity, right? Like we're past the era of American dominance. That's a good thing. And we're in a multipolar world. And that's not necessarily a good thing. There is like positive potential in a system where global power is distributed across multiple sites, multiple nodes, multiple hubs. But I've said this before, I've written this before. Ethno-nationalist multipolar order produces precisely this kind of conflict, right? An ethno-nationalist social order that exists within a multipolar distribution of power is fucked, right? Ethno-nationalism is racial chauvinism. It doesn't just heighten conflict, it's premised on conflict. Ethno-nationalism brings us wars more and more. And in this case, that's what's going on. And it could mean like nuclear war, which would be the disaster of disasters. Ethno-nationalism is exclusionary identity that's constructed out of ethnic and historical grievances. That only ends one way, and it ain't good. It ain't peaceful. Okay. So this is the world that's emerging. This is the multipolarity that's emerging. And it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of willpower by a lot of us to make this multipolar world something better than it is, something better than what's coming, which means we got to somehow defeat the nationalist international, fascist international, global MAGA, whatever you want to call it, right? That's the task. That's the task.